In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the crankshaft position sensor on this BMW 328i. Let's get into it. In the trunk, we're going to disconnect the battery over on the right side or passenger side. Take this panel off. There's a little twist knob there. Just slide that out of the way. You can see the negative terminal. We're going to disconnect that with a 10mm wrench. Slide the terminal off and out of the way. We're going to remove this cover, use an 8mm socket, take these bolts out. Grab the cover and just slide it forward. On the sides, we're going to take these covers off. There's two clips, one on the back, one on the front. I'm just going to use a pick to get the front one up. And that should slide up. And we'll do the same on the other side. We're going to remove this AUC sensor, just twist it to the right, and it slides out. And you can see where there's some retainers holding the wiring harness down. Just pop those out, and we'll just set this to the side. We're going to remove this wire bracket. I'm just going to grab it and slide it forward. It is just clipped in. There's no way to access those clips. Just slide that off out of the way. Using a 8mm socket, there's some screws on the side. Take those out. There's some wire retainers underneath the panel. I'm just going to use a straight blade screwdriver. Just pop those wire retainers open. Just like that. Take the wire out of there. Grab this panel. We're just going to slide this forward. Just like that. And it comes right out. Just going to clean up some of the dirt using some compressed air. That's good. I'm just going to remove this cover. Just pop the front up. It's just clipped in. That opens up. Take the wires out. We're going to remove this cover, use an 8mm socket, take these screws out. There's two in the back. Grab the cover, slide it up, out of the way. Using a straight blade screwdriver, remove this cover. Just twist it to the left. Pops out. Using a E18 socket, take this bolt out. Pull that out. Using a E14 socket, take this bolt out. You can grab the bar, slide it right out. Remove these two bolts, use a 10mm socket. Disconnect the connector for the mass airflow sensor. I'm just using a pick underneath the tab and slide the connector off. And we're going for the worm clamp. Just use a straight blade screwdriver. And loosen that up. Separate the snorkel from the airbox and pull the airbox out. Remove these two nuts. Use a 10mm socket. Take the reservoir off, slide it off the bracket. I'm just going to move this to the side. Go under this pipe. This pipe is in the way a little bit, so we'll just disconnect that. Push down on the tabs. Go right underneath and slide that over there. Loosen up this worm clamp here. Just with a straight blade screwdriver. Slide that off, out of the way. Disconnect the connector over here for the map sensor. Down on the tab, slide that off. Just follow that harness back a little bit. Take it out of that bracket, just so it's out of the way. Try to move these wires out of the way temporarily. There's a hose right here. We want to pop this off. Follow that down. It's connected right here. Just twist that back and forth a little bit. Just be careful not to break the end. Slide that off, out of the way, and pop this wire out of the bracket. Push those back. There's another wire with a bracket. Just try to get those all out of the way. There's a connector right here. I'm just going to use a pick and just pull up on the tab. Just be careful not to break it. Disconnect the connector there. Down by the throttle body. Just push on the tab there. Right. There you go. Tabs right there on the side. There's a worm clamp attached to this tube. We're just going to loosen that up. I'm just using a 1/4" socket. Loosening that up. You could use a straight blade screwdriver if you want to. Just so we can move that so that we can access that bolt. If you have to, you can just pull the tube off. Might be a little easier. Slide that off. Using a 10mm socket, loosen up these bolts. And take the throttle body out. Just be careful, don't drop it. There's a bracket right here. We want to take the bolts out for that. Use a T30 socket. Where's the, there it is. And pull that bolt out. Now that's loose. Disconnect the hose right here. Just push on the two tabs. Slide that off. You're going to slide it towards the front of the vehicle. That's out of the way. Disconnect the O2 sensors. Just push down on the tab. Slide that off. This one too. You can fish these through. We'll just have to feed those through later when putting it back together. Using a T25 socket, take this bracket off. This is attached to the fuel line. Slide that bracket out of the way. So this oil pressure sensor wire doesn't get in the way. We'll disconnect that. Just push down on the tab. Slide that off. Put that out of the way. Using a 11mm socket, take the bolts out for the intake plenum. And give it a wiggle. Just slide it out. Watch out for the fuel line. Just pull it up a little bit. There's some connections on the back. Disconnect the wire right here. Just use a pick, get underneath there, slide that out. And then the two hoses, we'll disconnect those. Just push down on the tabs. Slide it off. Those are off. You got one more wire that goes to this box in the back. Use a pick, get underneath the tab. Slide that wire off, and the manifold comes right out. Using a E10 socket, we're going to take the bolt out for the crank sensor. Take that bolt out. Now I'm just using some hose pliers or needle nose pliers to just wiggle the sensor back and forth a little bit. Trying not to break it. Slide it out. Disconnect the connector. Just get a pick underneath the tab. Slide the connector out. Take the new sensor, put a little silicone on the O-ring. It'll connect the connector. Only goes one way. Lock that in. And slide it into the hole. Just work it back and forth. Just use the pliers just to help get that lined up. But be careful not to break it. That looks good. Take the screw, get that started. And snug that down. Now we're going to clean the intake ports. Use a little brake parts cleaner and a rag. Just wipe down where the gasket material would go. If you need to, you can use a scraper. Just try not to get anything into the ports. You can also use a razor blade. Just clean that up. You want to replace the gaskets, just use a pick, get underneath here, pull the old intake gasket off, get the new gaskets, just push those on, make sure it's all lined up all the way around, and you can do the same for the other ones. Slide this in place, I'm going to connect these tubes. Those down. We have some wires to connect. This one's going to go right here. And it's another one that goes and connects right there. Connect that, that's good. We have our O2 sensor wires. Want to come through. And line the intake up over the studs. Get the nuts started. The bolt started. We'll just snug these down, start from the middle, work your way outward. Just make sure nothing got pinched. Looks good. And starting from the center, we're going to torque this to 11 foot-pounds and just work your way outwards, alternating back and forth. Connect the O2 sensors. Lock those down in the bracket. Lock that down. The bracket for the fuel. Get that started, get the bolt started. I'll snug that down. Just snug. And take this hose, line that up. I'm going to connect that. Squeeze that on there and take the screws, get the screws started for this bracket underneath. those are started. All right, snug that down. On the throttle body, you want to make sure the seal is either replaced or it's still in good shape. If it's flattened at all, you want to replace it. You just take it out with a pick and then put a new seal in. This one looks pretty good. Slide the throttle body in place, connect the bolts. Get those started. I'm going to torque these bolts to 7 foot-pounds. Connect the connector, lock that down, take the map sensor, slide that in place, get the bolts in. Get those started. Snug those down. I'll slide some of these wires in place. This hose is going to go in that bracket. This other wire is going to go on this bracket. There's a connector that's going to go to the map sensor. Connect that. This hose will go underneath. Make sure that's out of the way. Oh. I think these are swapped. This goes here. This one goes here. Like that. I'll slide this snorkel over the throttle body. Just move the wires out of the way so you can tighten the worm clamp. And we'll snug that down. And just snug that up. Make sure that's tight. That's good. Take this hose. Going to run in behind here and connect to the top of there. That's good. And connect this connector. Lock that in. It's going to this part of the snorkel. Line this up. Get the wire out of the way so you don't crush that. Tighten that down. And it's snug. Power steering reservoir. Just go around that hose. And get the new 2 nuts started, and we'll tighten those down. Snug those down. Wipe it off if any spilled out. Now hook this hose up, the vacuum hose. That's good. I take the connector for the oil pressure sensor and plug it in. Put the air box in place. Push that, attach the snorkel. Tighten the worm clamp down. It's snug. Connect the connector for the mass airflow sensor. Put the 2 bolts in here. Get those started. Snug that down. Slide this bar in place. Get the bolts started. Bolt in there started. Tighten those down. Put the cap on. Lock that down. Put the cover on. And get the screws started. Snug those down. And take this cover. Get the wires slid in position. And latch it down. And I'll line this piece up. Clip in underneath the weather stripping in the back. And get these wiring harnesses in place. Just pop that open again with the straight blade screwdriver. Go through there. Latch that down. Take this wiring harness, get that lined up, lock it in. Take the screws, get those started. Snug that down. Take the cover, line the cover up, lock that in place. Do the same on the other side. Snug down. On this side we have the air quality sensor. Push the retainers in. It'll slide in place. Lock it down. Then you can take this cover, put the cover on. And take the cabin filter cover, line that up. It's all lined up. Get all the screws started. And tighten these down. Connect the battery. The negative terminal, we'll tighten that down. snug that down, give it a wiggle, make sure it's tight. It's good. Take the cover, line it up, lock it down.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.